Welcome to another episode of Tech Lounge, a podcast where we discuss the ever-changing world of technology. And now your host, Dan Duran.
Why am I the only one clapping?
I'm waving. Hey guys, everybody.
Another day, another dollar. Right?
Another day, another 49 cents. The government gets the rest.
There
Exactly.
you go.
Hey guys, my name is Dan Duran, and this is the Tech Lounge. Thank you for joining us. Here we discuss topics related to business, entrepreneurship, technology, and of course, cybersecurity. Welcome to the show. Woohoo!
Hey everybody.
Season 2, Episode 2, Critical Security Controls. I know it's a lot to take in, so we're going to keep it light, and hopefully you'll get some value out of this live podcast. Absolutely. Just remember, we stream live on YouTube every Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're also on podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast. I'm reading from my notes here. Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and Podbean. We're pretty much everywhere. So make sure you connect with us by using the hashtag DanDuran every Friday. So now sit back and relax. This is the Tech Lounge, everybody. Woohoo! Critical Security Controls. We have Andrew Swart in the house. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dan. I'm doing very well. Thanks. How are you?
Good. Our expert technical sales manager in the house, right?
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And of course, we have our co-host extraordinaire, the man himself, the Superman of Big Wire and Rhino Cybersecurity, Andrew Somerton.
Hey everybody. Nice to see you all again. Hey Andrew, thanks for joining us again, bud.
My pleasure.
All right, let's get on with the show. So if you have any shout outs, if you want to send us your love, just make sure you hit that keyboard on the chat and just send in your love and comments and stuff like that. Okay, they're coming in already. Oscar.
Hello everybody. Or everyone.
Boris.
Yeah, and send your questions. We want to answer questions. We want to help you as a small business owner. We want to make sure that you get the most value out of this. Send your questions in, follow up with us. We're here to help you.
I see someone there, Cassandra there. Gladstone. Can we throw Cassandra up?
Cassandra.
There we go. Hi guys, first time catching the show. Welcome. We're loved to have you.
You got this. We got it, Cassandra.
We got it.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you joining.
It. Okay, so critical security controls. What is it? Andrew Swart, give us the lowdown.
All right. So if you think about cybersecurity, you think about a couple of things. One is you think about all the controls in your company. So all the technical controls. So you've got, your antivirus, your endpoint detection and response. You've got, backups. You've got the firewalls. You've got email security. You got all these technical security controls. And on the other side, you've got what's called governance. It basically means all your information security policies. Just like you've got HR policies or anything else, you've got your information security policies that govern how you go about cybersecurity.
You're saying on the other side, so it's not part of the security controls, correct?
No, that's exactly right. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So basically, when you have a company, right, and let's say you have 20 people, 50 people, however you always try to do things securely, right? So you get antivirus, you do have data protection and stuff, all of that, but everything is in the air, right? Everything is in the air. The security controls help you. It's a roadmap that helps you consolidate everything that you have and put it into an orderly fashion, and structurized fashion, so you can be more secure. That's the key about critical security controls. That's why they're called critical security controls, right?
You got it.
So I'm displaying my screen right now, and this is the 18 CIS. CIS stands for the Center of Internet Security. Center for Internet Security is a nonprofit that was created in 2000, I believe, and it was basically it's not a non-government institution, right? And it's because of all these threats and all these problems that are going on in the world with hacking and all of that. So they decided to create this, and it took off like wildfire. So it is a really good, very competent organization. The last security controls were done in 2017, I believe, version 7, and this one is version 8. So and it's 18 of them, right?
Well, and what's so important about this is as a small, mid-sized, or large company, if you don't know your cybersecurity controls, you don't know what to just Google this information, and it outlays all 18 of them, and you can break them down, and then it helps you identify it. I mean, obviously, you're always welcome to hire an expert in an organization, but these are great ways to understand everything, every aspect of your critical controls.
Yes. So if you go to CIS Security, CISsecurity.org, that's where you're going to find them. And they come with two things that are really cool. A booklet, right? So the booklet is like a guide that you can read about each one of them. And the second one is a spreadsheet that has all the security controls. They divide it into 3 tiers. So they're called implementation groups. So IG1, IG2, IG3, and depending on the size of your organization and the complexity that you have inside of your operations. So
you always start with implementation group number 1, no matter the size of your organization. If you don't have that in place, start with that. If you're a smaller company, definitely you may only need to do implementation group 1 or 2. But yes, start with 1, then go to 2, then go to 3.
Yeah. They call it the baseline, or IG1, or cybersecurity hygiene. So it's like kind of like brushing your teeth, like combing your hair, putting on your shoes, all of those things, taking a shower, all of those things in terms of IT and security, right? So the first one and the second one are super important. That sets the entire baseline of the security controls. And Andrew Swart, maybe you can give us a little lowdown of
for sure.
what number 1 and number 2 are, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, if you want to protect what you have, if you want to protect your business, you need to know what you have. So you need to know, hey, I've got some critical data on these parts of the network. I've got some servers, or I've got some cloud servers, or even some applications. You need to know what you're using and what's critical. So if you've got, you're a business that deals with a lot of vendors or a lot of clients, that data is very important for you. And you've got that data probably in some kind of like a CRM or some other type of software. And that's very important for you. So you're just going through your entire business, listing out what is very important in terms of your infrastructure and your applications. So I'd encourage everyone, just list that out. That's a good business practice. But then at the same time, find a company. Rhino is a company that can do that, but find a company that can do a quick assessment that includes listing out everything that you've got, so you can help put on there what's critical and what you need to protect.
Yes. So a couple of ways that I see this is we have a service at Rhino. It's a vulnerability scanning and assessment, right? And when we do our end mapping and we use our tools for assessing the environment, we enumerate, and then we can tell you what vulnerabilities there are. But the cool thing about this is that we can enumerate every single endpoint, every single computer, every single device that you have in your company. So you don't have to be with that notepad. Okay, so we have this computer, this Apple TV, we can do it for you, right? And it's only $600.
I was going to say, it's a very affordable service with having the expert come in and do it. Absolutely.
Exactly. So just call our expert technical sales person here in the sport, and he'll go over all of the stuff that.
Now, this is not a plug for Rhino, guys. We're just a solution out there, like a lot of other companies. So most importantly, you understand this and get it done for yourself. If we can help you, wonderful. But we don't want to plug our sales. But definitely call rhino.io.
Exactly. Calendar. So number one and number two are basically inventory of all the computers, all the endpoints, all the devices that you have in the network. Number two is the all the software applications that you have everywhere, right? So
Yeah.
the second thing that you do this is if you have an RMM. An RMM is a remote management and monitoring service. Like we have Datto RMM, for example. It lists all the endpoints that have the agent and also all the software applications. We also deal with something like Sentinel-1. So we're Sentinel-1 partners, and Sentinel-1 does a really good job at enumerating every single endpoint and all the applications as well. And the reason for this is because you want to know what you have. If there's a rogue system somewhere that's connected to your network, that's not a really good thing, right? And also, if you have applications that shouldn't be there, so like torrents, a lot of employees like playing video games like Fortnite and stuff like that. Not good for business, right?
Yeah, or using their machines for crypto mining or any kinds of other nefarious activity.
Wow, we found that with one of our clients.
Yeah.
Crypto mining, seriously. The third one is very important as well, and it's part of the hygiene, is data protection, right? What happens if you have a ransomware event? What happens if your data, like you have a fire? What happens if all your data from your servers and your computers is gone all of a sudden? How can you get a backup that works? So,
Dan, I think you're talking about critical security control number 11, data recovery, as opposed to data protection, where you're.
Yes. So there is a difference between.
But there is an overlap too.
Yes. Okay.
Tell
us about.
I was going to say just so they're clear, there are a couple overlaps, and if you actually look at the list.
What is
for sure. So data protection, I think you want to. If you think about your data, you've got data that you've got on your servers. You've got data that's going through the wire. Data. So you got data at rest that's sitting on your servers. You've got data in motion, and you want to protect both of those types of data. So you want to encrypt it. So if anybody gets to it, they have no idea what it is. That way, if you've got personally identifiable information or personal health information of any of your clients, it's encrypted and they don't have access to it. So that's one way that you can protect it. One simple thing that you can do to start with that hygiene this afternoon is check, is your data on your machines encrypted? If you've got Microsoft, do you have BitLocker turned on? So that's where I'd start with data protection.
Yes, it's the integrity. So the three things, right? Like availability, integrity, and confidentiality. The triad. That is talking about. Yes, thank you for correcting me. I really appreciate that, Andrew. Absolutely, I was talking about backups and recovery, which is number 11.
Andrew, what did you mention really quickly because it was cut off? What's the easy recommendation for that? BitLocker.
BitLocker. Or I mean, if you've got an antivirus tool, a lot of them already have built in with them the ability to encrypt the files on your machine. So that's what I would recommend for protecting your data at rest. Protecting data in motion. If you've got several sites, you want to protect the data that you're sending between the sites for your company. Put in place a good VPN. There's different architectures that you can use and different solutions for each one. If you want to protect your data in motion out to the internet, you can use a VPN out to the internet as well. So just some very simple things that you can start doing today.
Yes, and the other thing, you have to remember the rule of least privileges, right? So making sure that accounts don't have admin access, things like that, right? And in everybody, there's a lot of information in the organization, right? And these they need to be in silos. Sometimes because you don't want to give access to certain individuals inside of the organization to everything that if you have financial data, if you have like HR data, and then you have marketing and sales, they should be managed independently. So all of that data needs to be protected by rules and ownership of the data, as well as lease privileges. The rule of lease privileges, right?
What's really important about this, guys, anybody out there watching and learning, this is a lot of information to take in, and this is very, very accessible for you to learn and listen to. What's really, really critical is implementing it, calling an expert. You don't have to be scared about it, but every business now, small, medium, or large, need to be aware. All because you have an IT individual or an IT department doesn't mean you're secure. You have a security measure in place. So you really need to start putting these measures in place immediately to protect you, because it's not if, it's when, companies are going to be hacked or shut down at this point. It's getting worse and worse each and every day. I mean, cybersecurity insurance is getting more and more difficult to get. You have to jump through a lot more hoops to make that happen. So not to put fear in anybody out there. This is all about awareness, guys, and making sure that you actually move forward and start applying this to make your company better and more protected.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, one of our clients is just going through this. It's sort of management foresight. They're going through this because they're working to make their company more valuable.
Exactly.
And this is just a disciplined process as part of the rest of your discipline processes that you put in place to make sure that you're got your company from the point where you're sort of running around trying to do this and trying to do that to the point where things have a disciplined process and are scalable. And
exactly,
this is just one part of that.
Yes.
That's a great point, Andrew. Actually, we just had that meeting the other day, Andrew and myself, actually, and it's such a good point, because most small to mid-sized business, you're envisioning scalability, and you're envisioning either investors or exit strategies, and having these type of policies in place is critical to that, because someone coming in and investing or wanting to basically buy you out potentially want to make sure those measures are in place. And that's actually great point, Andrew. I completely forgot about that meeting. It is true.
Absolutely.
So true.
Absolutely. So we open the forum, right? If you have any comments, if you have any questions, or from our audience, just make sure you post them in there. Oh, and we see one. The first one, Oscar Garrido. He asked, "How many times do we need to do a vulnerability assessment?"
All right, I'll give a first answer to that.
I like that.
So here, the first answer is, if you aren't doing security assessments, you need to do one, and you need to do it as soon as possible. So do one. And the next part of that answer is, if you are making changes in your network on an ongoing basis, I'd say do them quarterly. If you're a smaller company, maybe do them every 6 months. At least do them every year. If you're making a lot of changes all the time, you can do them continuously as well. So depending on the size of your company, I'd probably recommend for, say, a company of 30 to 50 people, you probably want quarterly vulnerability assessments.
Yes. And if you're a bigger company, or you are managing critical servers, critical data, I really recommend doing a penetration test. As opposed to a vulnerability assessment. So you go a little farther and you see real vulnerabilities and exploitation methods from unethical hacking before they occur in real life, right? So there's a difference between vulnerability assessments and penetration tests, right? So vulnerability assessments are automated tools usually, and then out of that you get a report. A penetration test goes farther than that. There is threat modeling, scripting, and the idea of a penetration test is to basically exploit a system or a network or a website, etc. So yes, recommendation 4 times at least per year for vulnerability assessments. Start with one, and at least one penetration test if you have critical infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments? I see a comment in there from Sean. Sean.
I see it too.
Oh, is Gladstone there?
Yeah,
yes.
He's there. Yeah, absolutely. Nope. We got that one already.
You missed it. There you go. Okay. Tech Lounge. He says Tech Lounge is another reason I love Friday. Thanks for the content. Sean,
we love it too, Sean. Thanks so much, buddy.
This makes my entire day. Sean is a very good musician.
Hey Dan, can we do it? Can we? There we go. We'll do it together. Can we? Oh, wait a second. Can we do it? I don't know. But there we go. My hands all. I can't do it.
Oh, you're way off. You guys are way off.
Yes. So Sean is a very good musician too. He plays the guitar incredibly. He was showing us how to play the guitar this morning, and it was fantastic. So yeah, Do we have any other questions? Any other comments out there? Okay, let's move on. So maybe we go through the rest of the stuff. Let's see.
Yeah, just kind of read them out so everybody knows, and then we'll kind of highlight a few of them as we go through them.
Maybe you can just
You're
tell a
grabbing
couple
the
of
meat.
stories of things that we've seen from just simple vulnerability assessments. And the first one I'd like to start off with was, I mean, we've seen where people have the ability to go in and just turn off the lights, or not the lights,
true.
but turn off all the equipment, actually shut down power to your electronic equipment, to your network equipment.
Yep.
So that's one. I mean, there's a lot of others. Dan, do you want to bring something up of something scary we've seen in a simple vulnerability assessment?
Yeah, we've seen things where you have interfaces that are not password protected, or they have default passwords. So we get into, as you said, like the actual power interfaces where you can just shut everything down electrically. I'm not even talking about hacking. I'm just talking about shutting down the whole all the servers just by turning off a switch, right? So,
and just to be clear, that is hacking that brings that in, because it's the hacking that goes in, so that the hacking means from a computer perspective, you've actually got control over the electrical power to the equipment.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing too. Like, one of the things we do very well with our penetration and vulnerability, not so much vulnerability because it's a lot more, but penetration is much more intense. But is proof of concept, proof of penetration. Visuals, things that we've actually identified and seen and shown. So if you're asking anybody to do that, make sure that when they're presenting their findings to you, that there's proof of findings, right? They're not just saying they found them. Make sure that make sure they can actually prove their results. When you're actually reaching out to an organization to do a penetration or vulnerability test.
Yeah, for sure.
We've seen things, for example, like again, default passwords and on the IRACs and in servers in domain controllers with that would be like the really, really bad ones, default credentials on domain controllers. What we've seen also is backups, right? Especially when you're talking about VMs, so virtual machines sitting on a server with backups. Even though they are very well secure in there in terms of the latest firmware and all of that, you actually go into the physical server and then you can actually delete the entire VM, right? So that's we found that in there. Even though there are precautions in terms of security, we still can get into them. What else? Some of the bad stuff.
I'm just thinking about the simpler vulnerability assessments and not the penetration testing, because obviously there's a lot more stories that come in with penetration testing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so what else?
Adrian just asking a quick question about what's the difference between a penetration test and a vulnerability test. It's really the depth of the research. Really, I mean, how deep we go. I mean, there's some fundamental differences. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. So with the vulnerability assessment, you're going in there with your tools in order to find weaknesses, known weaknesses in the network, and you scan over everything, and we find out, oh man, this operating system is not patched. It's actually so old that it can't be patched. You find all of that with the vulnerability assessment. With the penetration test, you start with that, and then you go in and you start exploiting those things. So you start actually going into those weaknesses, taking advantage of them, and then going inside and finding out where you can get to and what you can do, and then making all the recommendations along the way of not only you just have to patch these vulnerabilities, but if somebody were to take advantage of that, they could get to this and this and this, and here's how you need to take care of each one of those things to get those layers of security in place.
It's a real awareness scenario, because it makes you say, oh my goodness, I can't believe that I could be held for ransomware, or my system could be shut down, or my data could be stolen. That's what the penetration test is really. These guys are doing it for me before it's a critical issue.
Exactly.
And that's what's so important about that, because it's like, wow, okay, let's fix that so that can't happen, or we do our best to mitigate that from ever happening, because there's never a guarantee in anything, obviously, but the more you mitigate, the more things you put in place, the more layers you do to protect yourself, the more secure you become.
Yeah, and we're talking about configurations, right? And that's actually CIS Control 4,
Mm-hmm.
which deals with secure configuration of enterprise assets. Some of the assets, for example, even CCTV cameras, with the ports open to the public and people on the public can see your cameras and things like that. These are kind of no-nos. Or opening up like a NAS into the world with not even a SSL certificate or anything like that. I think this is a pretty and the problem with this is that most of these devices, they come with default configurations that are not secure at all. Right? So you have to physically change those configurations. It's not just about setting it up and then forgetting about it, right? So yeah, that's very important, right?
For sure.
And then we have things like account management, right? This one is pretty important. Maybe you can say a couple of things, Andrew Swart, about account management.
I thought we sort of already went over some of that in terms of lease privileges, making sure that you only give each style of account the access that they need. And yeah, so I thought you'd already done a decent
make
job
sure every computer does not have admin access.
Admin access, exactly.
Right. So just just to user level access. And make sure that every account, if you do have admin access, you don't repeat your passwords everywhere across the entire enterprise, right? That will be a bad thing. Then we talk about access control management. So basically permissions. This is roles and permissions. So let's say you have QuickBooks or you have a CRM, a Salesforce or Business One and what have you. You want to limit the amount of role and permissions. So a role is basically, okay, so this individual has access to the financial accounting part of the CRM, but that's the role. And the permission says, but he's not allowed to edit anything. He can only view. So that's the difference between permissions and roles. And then we get into vulnerability assessment and management, which we already talked about this, right? Making sure that all your systems are patched, right? So you don't have software or servers that are end of life and not supported, like Windows 7 or stuff like that, right? So
Dan, I know we've talked about vulnerability assessments already, which is great. I just wanted to point out one thing. Again, something that you as a business owner can go home and do this afternoon. Now, don't do all these things this afternoon. Maybe take, Friday, an hour or two every Friday for the next few weeks, or just to start putting in place some of these things and get comfortable. But one thing you can do, simple, for access control management is just go into some of your cloud applications and make sure you've got two-factor authentication turned on.
Absolutely. That's a great, and not just on the cloud applications, but if you can do it on like your Office 365, for example, or your G Suite. If you're a G Suite enterprise, make sure you turn on that dual factor authentication. We use it all the time with all of our clients. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you can do that. There's different ways of doing that. I like to use an app called Authy. It's just an authentication app. I like it because it goes across multiple devices and you're not stuck on one device. And I've had it before with the Google Authenticator, where my phone went down and couldn't get it back. And now I had to go back in and go through a long process for every single account and reset it. But that's one reason. A little plug for Authenticator app called Authy. It's free and it's great.
Yeah, and do you know you can actually back up your Authenticator, all your stuff from Google Authenticator.
So that's what I did wrong.
Yeah.
There you go.
The other thing, but that's a great point, Andrew. But the other thing is, like, if you're using a password management tool, we use LastPass, for example, or Dashlane or what have you. They also provide a dual authenticator inside of those tools, right? So and password managers are really good too. You should be using that. That way you don't have to worry about creating passwords at all. You can just set the length of your password, very complex, and then that is and you can use it throughout every single device in browser, right? So
And that another point along. Sorry, Dan, I interrupted you. I should not do that.
Don't worry
Carry
about
on.
it. Don't worry about it. You are a wealth of knowledge, and we love you, man. We love you. So go ahead.
Absolutely.
All right,
Interrupt,
access
please.
control management. Another thing a simple thing that you can do. If you're creating a new account, instead of going in there and creating your username, Andrew Zwart, you can make your username a number of characters and letters that don't make any sense, and then with your password manager, your username and your password are both mumble jumble and are a lot harder for people to get critical information out of.
Yes, I believe we have some questions on
We do have,
from
we
the
have a
audience.
question from
Oh, there
Sonia.
you go.
I was gonna read it. Absolutely. What do we often see companies doing wrong when talking to them about cybersecurity needs? Well, first, let me start by great question. And if we're talking to them, they're doing everything right, because meaning that they're reaching out to an expert or reaching out to an organization that is going to help them do things right. So I guess I want to start off with that. So if we're actually talking to them because they've reached out to us, they have a need, they have a desire, and they are willing or wanting to learn about how to protect themselves. So that's first and foremost, they're doing everything right by doing that, by asking the experts. But Dan, I know maybe a couple of things.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity is an onion. I love to use your analogy. You've said this forever, and I always throw this out there. But there's multiple layers to that, right? And so the more things you do, so I don't know if there's anything wrong in anything you're doing, but the more layers you have when you apply them to cybersecurity, the more protected you are. Some things maybe are cart and horse. You should be doing something first before you do something else. So we may identify that. But the fact that you're having the conversation with us or you're implementing cybersecurity measures, that's wonderful. Those are the things. But maybe, Dan, do we have something specific to share?
Yes.
And Dan, can you just, I don't see it on my screen, but can you just read the original question again just before you answer it?
What do you often see companies do wrong when talking to them about their cybersecurity needs?
Okay.
I can answer a couple of things. So what do you see wrong or right? It's not about wrong or right. It's about being secure and being not secure, right? So there's not such a thing. What we see though is that when we go in, they need help. Absolutely, 100% they need help, because imagine you're an IT part of your IT staff, and you're concerned about making sure that those servers are always running, making sure that the backup systems are running, making sure that every computer is not slowing down, that you don't have problems on your network. There's projects that you have to do, so you're always running around, basically like a chicken with the head cut off, right? So you don't have time. You need hands and you need help in terms of cybersecurity. So it's not about wrong or right. It's about needing that extra support from a company like a cybersecurity company that can come in and do what's called in Rhino terms, Rhino ARM, which is assess, remediate, and then maintain. Right. So we come in, we do an assessment or where you are. We say, okay, hold on, let us do the assessment part, and then let's start fixing all the vulnerabilities, and then we'll monitoring, like through our MDR, through our endpoint protection, through whatever it is, we monitor for you. So it's a helping hand as opposed to what you're doing wrong or right. That's
well,
my
yeah,
take.
no, I think I would say you can do something wrong, and that's just just stick your head in the sand and just think. And it's simple to do. Like it's like this is a big, hard topic. I don't really know how to deal with it, so I'm going to push it off. Pushing it off, that's the wrong way to deal with it.
100%. Yeah. And to the question is, when they're speaking to us, what do we see they're doing wrong? And that's why I said, if you're speaking to us, that's the first step of doing things right. But to Andrew's point, by putting it off and not talking to anybody or evaluating where you are, and then putting measures in place, that's the only really wrong thing you can do.
Yeah, that's the worst thing you can do, right? You have to. Anyway, so we have other questions I see as well. So we got one from Oscar. Maybe you can put that on the screen, Gladstone. Thank you for your questions. We really appreciate all your love and support that you give us. It says, how can we keep our company staff aware all of these cybersecurity threats so they don't become a victim as well as us? Great. So cybersecurity awareness training. He's talking about that, and that's one of the controls.
It is one of the controls. Right? Yeah.
So that's control number 14, cybersecurity awareness and skills training. That's super important. Andrew Somerton, maybe you can give us a little insight into this, right?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is you never want to instill fear in your organization. You want to instill awareness. So hence the terminology cybersecurity awareness training. So what you need to be doing is, as an organization, is training your staff, your team members, your colleagues, etc., on what to be looking for and what things to identify. And then always be learning and morphing into basically having that culture, that cybersecurity culture in your organization. So by hiring an organization, there's a lot of them out there that can give you really interactive training videos with questions. We do it at Rhino, obviously, but there's a lot of organizations that do that. There's a cybersecurity awareness course on Udemy that's very inexpensive. That's kind of a very beginner course that teaches you a lot. There's lots of places out there that you can learn, and you can have your staff learn, your team learn about cybersecurity awareness. And really, that's the weakest link in cybersecurity, because you can put all the measures in place. You can do all the, the firewalls, the endpoint, the MDRs. You can, have the Sentinel-1s and everything else, and they're all value. There's no question. There's incredible value, and that's about mitigating risk. But awareness and cybersecurity awareness training is the last line of defense. So it's really important you do that. And there's lots of value. There's a lot of services out there that can do it very inexpensively for you, and your team can have fun with it. I mean, at Rhino, we have a gamification scenario where you can compete against your colleagues, and it's really, really cool. You can learn and have like winners and everything else. So a lot of fun with it, and it's really important. It's about building, not fear, building awareness. So great question.
And the other thing that you need to be aware of is that you have, even though you have general training, so let's say phishing and clean desk and everything else, right? There's also very specific training that you should give critical departments. So, for example, finance and accounting, you can't just put them through general training. You need to talk about financial and scams and vendor and spear phishing and all of that stuff for your finance staff. And then HR is a different ball game, where it's all about PII, so personal identifiable information, that you need to teach how to protect that. So there's different facets, sensitive data handling, for example, all of those things. Maybe somebody on the warehouse doesn't need like a sensitive data handling training, but somebody in upper level, like your CEO level, needs, right? So so there's different trainings as well. So it's not just one for everybody, one type of training for everybody, right?
One big thing you're going to learn, anything to do with cybersecurity, typically when it comes to awareness, is if they're out there phishing you, or they're doing social engineering or spear phishing you, or it's all about panic. It's all about immediacy, right? A lot of the times they're getting better and better. There's no question. But a little thing to be looking for, right? Spelling errors, grammatical changes. Again, call to urgencies. Always second guess those, and never react immediately. And certainly don't be clicking on things you don't recognize or you don't know. And to Dan's point, it's so important. Specific individuals in an organization. We know of an organization in our own backyard, not far from Kitchener, that it was all about they had a supply issue. One of the suppliers, it was a pretend supplier, and they spent millions of dollars paying out on this organization over a long period of time. And that was social engineering, and it was in the news, etc. So it's not about building fear; it's about building awareness. So great question.
And you're talking about service provider management, which you're just hitting on.
There we go.
All these relationships that you have with vendors, right? So, how do you know that a vendor is secure? There's a lot of instances where it happened to some of our clients that the vendor gets hacked, and then all of a sudden they have all our clients' information because they got hacked, and then they get phished, and there's this whole problem about vendors. So you need to manage your vendors properly. You need to ask the right questions. You need to make sure that they do have some sort of security in place for those vendors.
And that's where it's important for the large company to make sure that they're managing their vendors, and that's actually something that's more and more common now, is that the larger companies is requiring their vendors to show that they've had penetration testing, that they've remediated the issues that have been found in order to do business with them, because they don't want a security risk coming in from a vendor. And at the same time, as a smaller company, you want to make sure that you are secure, so that nothing can come back on top of you if something were to happen. Like, you don't want to be compromising, whether it's your clients or anybody else or your vendors, because that's an expensive proposition, a lot more
Yes.
expensive than putting the security in place.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do we have any other questions? Please send us your questions so we can answer them. We have Andrew Swart, our expert technical sales manager, in the house. He laughs at me.
Diego asked here, what are the critical security control benchmarks?
Yeah, well, so the benchmarks is it is the CIS. So the CIS Critical Security Controls is a benchmark,
Is the benchmark,
right? So
exactly.
it
Yeah,
starts with the baseline, which is the very first benchmark that the company needs to be put it through and against, right? So it is a benchmark
That is,
for
yeah,
controls. It is
exactly.
the benchmark, right?
Right.
If you're
you
talking
can use the critical security controls CIS 18, or you can use any other standard too. So you can use a NIST, or you can use an ISO
that's
27001.
exactly
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was going to talk about, because the nice thing about the critical security controls is that they also reference, and there's references in to all the other big ones. We, like you mentioned, the NIST 800 and 53-53, and then CSF, right? And ISO 27001.
And if you're in
DSCS, PCI.
industry or manufacturing, you've got
I was gonna
IC
say,
62443, and
Yeah.
yeah, it really depends on the industry you're in and what you're trying to accomplish. There's no question. But
Yeah. So
yeah,
by applying the CIS, you can pivot from there afterward into those frameworks and start using those frameworks, because they're very they're linked, right? So you can reference, and
yeah,
even right on I think on the spreadsheet there is the references to the different and most important frameworks out there.
pretty much, yeah.
All right, good one. We have another
Yeah.
question. Does critical security controls generate data? If so, how is how is the data used? Uh,
it generates results, and then those results are used to, as we were just talking about, create a benchmark or baseline as to where you're at. So now you've got that knowledge, and then you act on that, and you get updated data. You say, okay, I've done this control and this control, and now you've got a different summary as to where you're at. So, I mean, the data are just the results that come out of it.
And I think that's really important when it comes to penetration tests. There's a thing called post-patching verification, right, or post-patching. And what happens is, after you go in, it's always good to make sure that you mitigate all those issues that you've identified and found. So it's not just fixing them; it's going in and making sure they're fixed afterwards, right?
Yeah. So there's two controls that I want to tackle, because this question is about generating data. And once you apply the security controls, you will generate data. And the security control number 8 is the audit log management. And basically, you have all kinds of logs that you're generating. So we're talking about 365 logs, server logs, access logs. You have error logs. You have so much stuff from the endpoint, from servers, from everywhere in the data. So you need to set up a process where you can actually identify and check and review all of these logs, right? So that's control number 8. And then we have the let me see, where is it? Which one is it?
You're looking for network.
Yes. So
Go down.
Network monitoring and defense is number 13.
There you go. Network monitoring and defense. This is where something like a CM solution or an like a MDR solution comes in very handy, because you can actually integrate all of these logs to come into one central place where you can actually do a lot of the triage, a lot of the analysis and threat hunting and all of that stuff, right? So those two things are super important to be able to have. First of all, you generate, every network, every company generates data and it generates logs. You need to make sure you review them. You need to make sure that they come into a central place. So these two talk about exactly what you're asking, Boris. That's a great question. Any other questions? Anything else? Not so. Okay, so let's continue on. So share my screen again. Okay, so here you can see that there's a penetration test, but there's also an incident response part. So this is basically to manage. Okay, so there is an intrusion, there is a virus, there is a hack attempt, and even scanning and probing and things. What can you do? How can you respond to these threats the quickest and the most effective way possible, right? So this talks about that. So at Rhino, we do have incident response reports that we issue every time there's something suspicious in the network or what have you. We respond by providing these reports and then acting on them as quick as depending on a threat level, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so if it's just sort of like an informational or a low priority or something, that may actually only go into your monthly report. But if there is something there that may be important, depending on what it is, if maybe it's a lower, medium, or even a high or critical type of an event, that's something where you're going to get an incident response report right away, and you're also, depending on the agreement that we have with you, you're also going to have us in there and taking care of things immediately. Where we're going to let you know, but we're not going to ask your permission because that's the point. We need to stop it before anything else happens.
Yes.
Well, and I think that's really important, guys. So, I mean, incident response management is critical by partnering with an organization or a tool that is able to do that for you. So, be able to have access to your controls, to be able to isolate the situation, to be able to shut it down. Because again, you're working in your business Monday to Friday, say 9 to 5. Other people other hours. But to be able to have a team behind you that can mitigate, can immediately respond, can isolate, like I said, shut down and address any issues that occur 24/7, ideally, that's what you're wanting to buy with a third-party company like a Rhino or another company. There's huge value to that, and it doesn't have to be extremely cost prohibitive. It's not. Depending on the size of your organization, it's and depending on what your need is, it doesn't have to be. So don't let it scare you to have a third-party company monitoring your system and giving them access to be able to help you in those type of situations. It's very, very important.
Absolutely, 100%. It's all a trust relationship that you have to build with the vendor, right? In this case, would be with Rhino. We have another question from Aura. Hello, Aura. She asks, what are the most common compliance obligations regarding sensitive data in Ontario? Wow, this is a good question. Andrew, can you answer that one?
Yeah, in Ontario, you've got I think Pipeda is one.
I call it Pipeda.
Yeah,
that's the personal information and protection electronics documentation act or something like that, right? I'm reading it. I'm cheating.
Oh, okay.
You cheating? Can't remember it all, right?
Yeah, so that's the first one. That's the one that takes care of, and I think there's the other one. I think this one is Canada-wide, right? If I'm not correct, the Ontario one, I completely forgot the name of the Ontario one, but the Canada-wide one, it's very important because it takes care of anything that's PII, right? So personable identifiable information. You should not disclose, like names, email addresses, phone numbers, all of that stuff. The one that we also see is Castle, right? So Castle for spamming and anything that has to do with communications on via the internet, right? So Castle is a big one. And then there's the ones that are more specialized. So, for example, we have the it's not the HIPAA compliance, but like when it comes to the like health for example, health
Aaron.
information, and we also have a like a PCI DSS if you are into generating information on credit cards and things like that. So yeah, so those are
Another one
good ones.
that's Ontario specific is the Ontario Energy Board has their own cybersecurity framework for all the energy producers here in Ontario.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
then there are a number of standards, of course, that are, not only Canada or Ontario, but worldwide.
Yes, we have another question from Oscar. Thank you for these questions, guys. We really appreciate. Are the CIS control guidelines are applicable for North America companies only, or can
No,
these also be used in any other country like Europe and Latin America, for example?
Anywhere
you
in the
can
world.
use them. Definitely. Oscar, for you, Latin America.
Absolutely, that's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a good baseline. It's a good organization, a good set of controls as a starting point.
I was going to say
for
it's a
any company.
baseline, guys. It's not a system or a network or a service you need to. It's a baseline. So by using them anywhere globally, it's putting all the right measures in place to protect you.
Yes,
That's the whole thing.
absolutely.
You'll need other requirements if you fall under the healthcare or as Andrew said, and into the engineering and energy or different criterias. But this is
Yes.
a benchmark for your organization to structure your cybersecurity landscape.
Yes, and these are like you have other ones like frameworks that are much bigger than the CIS, right? The CIS is
Mhm.
kind of like the starting point for companies that don't have any structured cybersecurity in place. I think that's the kind of like the go-to. But if you're a large organization, you wouldn't look at CIS. You would look at more robust and bigger frameworks because that covers more of the. You have to remember that the bigger organizations have more threats, more vulnerabilities, and they're targeted more by hackers, right? Just
Right.
because of the sheer size of those
And
organizations.
potentially they're governed by their industry as well. They're
Mhm.
directed by their industry what they need to have.
Yes.
Yep.
So we have another question from Sean in there. He asked, how much does penetration testing interfere with a company's normal activity?
It can.
It
It
can.
definitely can.
Great
Yep.
question.
And so that's why we work with our clients. Like, I mean, if we're trying to break into a server and that server is actively being used for something else, there's a good chance that you might notice that. It might slow down the server's ability to interact. But that's why we work with our clients
Yep.
to set up. Here's the hours. Don't work on these specific days, or don't do your penetration testing before 5 p.m. or after 9 a.m. Or, I mean, only do your penetration testing on the weekend. We work with our clients to mitigate that because, yeah, for sure, penetration testing can affect the network.
Well,
Yes.
it's funny. It can, but we've also encountered our clients who have questioned some of their MSP or their IT consultants, and they're like, "Can you guys do a penetration test on our system, and let's see if they identify what you guys are trying to do?" And we've had times where we've actually done a penetration test for an entire week or 2 weeks, and it has weighed down their network. And there was no identification. Like, they didn't come in and say, "Guys, what are you doing?" Like, Dan, I guess maybe you can comment to this too, but we've gone in and we've actually worked on it, done penetration tests, and there's been no red flags by their providers, which is again a huge concern when dealing with an MSP or dealing with an IT doesn't necessarily mean they understand the security, and that's why it's really important to understand what you're doing and how you're doing
Yeah,
it.
and that's not necessarily a knock on
No,
your
not
IT team
not at
or
all,
on
not at
your
all.
service provider because
Not
not we're security experts. That's what we
exactly.
do. That's what we do 24/7. And so it's good to work with a company to have that second set of eyes to come in to do that assessment, the vulnerability assessments or penetration testing. But at the same time, um, it's good to have a security company that you can call on at any point to be monitoring your network at any point,
Yeah.
so that we're taking care of the security at the same time
Same.
as your IT team is taking care of the
Care of
Yeah.
your
network.
IT.
Okay.
Exactly.
So absolutely, and it's just like when you are going to the clinic, for example, you go to a clinic or your family doctor, right? And you have a complaint of some sort of ailment. the doctor might look at what the problem is, but he is usually going to refer you to a specialist on that
Exactly.
particular like a ailment, right? So it's kind of the same thing with IT and security. IT might be able to pinpoint things that need to be done, that it might be beyond the scope of their activities, and they might involve a cybersecurity company to do those things, right? So at the end of the day, we work together with IT companies, with MSPs, as well as with the client for the good of the client.
That's the
So there is
ideal
no
goal, right?
wrongdoing or bad or bad. It is all about making sure that the client is secure. So and of course, there's good apples and bad apples out there. Obviously, like everything else in every industry, basically, right? So, but at the end of the day, is everything in towards the good of the
Absolutely.
client.
The ideal scenario is collaboration, so complete transparency, and everybody. The end goal is the client is protected.
Mm-hmm.
This is my plush rhino.
Yeah, I want the real rhino.
I was going to show you mine too, but I think my granddaughter stole it. It's normally around here.
This is for Diego's comment. He asked. He's telling us he loves the rhino doll.
The rhino doll. Yeah.
He's always ready.
All right. So, anything that we need to cover off before we wrap this up?
Yeah, so that was that was pretty a pretty good light, very light overview. If you have any questions, of course, reach out to us and we'll give you more information about these security controls, and we can actually schedule free of charge a consultation meeting with Andrew Swart. He's very well versed on all of these security controls, so don't be afraid, don't be shy. Just send us your request, and we'll be jumping right on it. Right?
Yeah, I'd be happy to go over your challenges and your goals for the year, and just provide some feedback. And hey, I mean, if all I'm doing is providing you some feedback and pointing you in the right direction, that's great. If we can provide some service to you that would provide a lot of value, I mean, even better. I'm here to help you.
Absolutely. And the only thing you can do wrong, guys, as Andrew said, is putting your head in the sand. By reaching out and asking for the information and getting started, that's what you need to do. So that's all we hope for you. And we hope you get a lot from this information. And please reach out if you need any help.
Yes. Next Friday. What are we going to be talking about next Friday?
I think we're going to be talking about ransomware, aren't we?
Yes. We're going to be talking about ransomware, REOG, Conti, playbooks, TTPs or techniques that hackers use, and some of the tools that we use to be able to do IOCs, for example. So and how we find vulnerabilities, and we do threat hunting for our clients, right? So it's going to be a very, very good show next week at 12 o'clock live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube as well. Don't miss it. And
all the lives.
You so much. Thank you so much for participating. We love the feedback, guys. We love your shout outs, your questions. So stay tuned next Friday, 12 o'clock.
Thanks, everybody. Andrew, thanks so much.
Yep.
Thanks,
have a great day.
Take care, everybody.
Cheers.